Hi, my name is Justin, aka Ghost Reader, and today I'm going to be doing a book review of the book Searching for Black Confederates, The Civil War's Most Persistent Myth by Kevin M. Levins. I got this book from NetGalley in exchange for a review, and this is printed by the University of North Carolina Press, and it already has come out. It came out September 9th. I'm still working on the written review, but I thought I would do a video review of it now. So, this book, as the title, as you can see from the title, is looking at the myth of black soldiers serving in the Confederate Army. And so the author of this book, his purpose is to show how evidence has been kind of misused and misrepresented to show that blacks joined the Confederate Army by the thousands, were all welcomed with open arms and served as equals in the Confederacy as soldiers fighting under the same flag. And basically, this is something that has a myth that's continued through to the present, where people, when you say, "Oh, the Confederate flag is racist," they can say, "Well, is it? If black soldiers and white soldiers fought equally under the same flag, did it really stand for racism?" It kind of ties into the whole. The Confederacy wasn't like fighting for slavery; it was fighting for something like slave rights or something like. I mean, not slave rights, state rights or something like that. And so the author in this book kind of goes through each of the evidence that's presented, backing up this claim that soldiers black soldiers fought in the thousands for the Confederacy willingly of their own free will, and he kind of goes through and says why that's wrong. And so there are pictures. He points out why the pictures don't tell the full story. There's still that master-slave dynamic you have to take into account. And so he even talks about one photo that is a true misrepresentation, where in fact it depicts Union black soldiers and not Confederate black soldiers. He points out that blacks did accompany the Confederate Army, but that the Confederate Army they accompanied the Confederate Army as camp servants, not as soldiers. And the Confederacy itself didn't allow soldiers to join until the last. Didn't allow blacks to join until the last months of the war, and I think only a couple hundred signed up. And of them, maybe only a few actually maybe fought in battle. So. Then looking at pension records that many point to, saying like, well, they received pension, so obviously they were considered part of they were considered equal soldiers. And when you look at the pensions in context, a lot of the times either some were rejected because they weren't soldiers, or they weren't rejected because they couldn't be proved to have been camp servants serving with a particular white master. And so he kind of goes through each one, showing why why you have to kind of look at history in context and not really just take a particular piece of history, look at it without looking in the greater context and saying like, this is what happened. You have to take everything in context, and that's kind of what he says in this book. And the reason why you kind of have a lot of this, he says, is that you have the lost cause proponents who say that, well, before the Union came, blacks and whites, our race relations were great, and the Confederacy wasn't fighting for slavery; they were fighting for slave rights, because how could they be fighting for slavery if whites and blacks were fighting equally on the same flag, fighting for their homes? And so that's why this myth kind of persists, because those who kind of want to divorce the legacy of the Confederacy from racism have to kind of have something to show that no, we weren't racist, because look at all these black soldiers that the Confederacy had fighting for them. And so this is kind of a myth that's been passed down and kind of perpetuated by groups like the Sons of the Confederate Veterans, Daughters of the Confederacy, and similar groups. And for a while, that actually kind of held some strength. Even some national parks were pushing this narrative of black soldiers. You can go out and find black Confederate soldiers. You can go out and find hundreds of websites that push this same narrative. But academia has been pushing back. Other people who have been pushing back as well. And it's fortunately, has something that has been kind of declining in recent years, the belief that um, these men willingly, or by the thousands, were serving in the Confederacy. So this book was actually really good because it kind of meticulously went through, showed why this evidence was wrong, kind of put things in context, and and I thought that he did that very well in explaining that. Also, one important thing that he points out is that helping push this, perpetuate this, are African Americans who kind of are pushing the narrative as well, that we served along our Confederate brothers, and you can kind of divorce the legacy of racism from the Confederacy as well, and that's kind of been helping in some ways too. At least perpetuate the myth, because people see African Americans are fine with it, then it must be okay. So, but overall, because of education and people being educated and going out and finding credible sources to get the information from, you kind of see a belief in that on the decline and not gaining as much root as it was before. But I thought this was a great book, and I think that, like, if you're interested in like Civil War history and perhaps this topic itself, I think this is a great examination of this topic. And he did, like I said, I think he did a really good job of presenting the evidence for why this isn't true, and then showing why something like this has been perpetuated and kind of went not necessarily mainstream but became very popular, and why you have to always be careful about putting things in context when talking about history. Actually, with anything, you need to put it in context, because context matters. And so I would recommend this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I just wish the publisher had given me a copy, or at least made available a copy for this on Kindle, because the other app I had to use to read this was not, the functionality of it wasn't so great. But I did find this book very interesting, very knowledgeable, learned a lot from this book. The author is very knowledgeable. He knows what he's talking about. He has a blog himself. He's a historian himself. So he kind of brings that historical expertise to this topic, which is good, because you need good history in order to provide good lessons for things that happened in the past and ways that we can move forward in the future. So that's my review for Searching for Black Confederates. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Let me know down in the comment section below if you like this. You can please hit that subscribe button if you want to see more videos from me. You can follow me on Twitter at GhostReads28, on Instagram at Justin the Ghost Reader, and also on Goodreads. The link to that is down in the description box below. So as always, keep reading.